Today's lesson is about bar graphs and line graphs. A bar graph is used when there are multiple categories and you're simply wanting to count and display the amount of items in each category. So an example of a bar graph. Bar graphs only ever operate in the positive quadrant. The categories go on the x-axis. So we would put our categories down here: blue, pink, and red. When you're making your bar graph, I suggest that you pick numbers for the y-axis that make sense depending on the numbers that you've been given in the data. For example, here we've been given numbers within the range of 2 and 8. What makes sense to me is to count up by 2 from 2 to 10, like this. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. You can always change the range depending on the data you've been given. If we have 8 blue markers, we know that the count for blue is going to be 8, so we'll make a little bar here. So our bar for blue goes from 0 to 8 and looks like that. Just like that, our count for pink is 6, which means the height of the pink bar will be 6. Finally, we only have 2 red markers, so our bar for the color red will be too high. Line graphs are used to show changes in data values that evolve over time. Line graphs also use an x and y axis. Again, they only use positive x and y values. Time is always shown on the x-axis. The values that change are always shown on the y-axis. These types of graphs will record both values and the times they were taken at, and then they're displayed drawing lines between those data points, like this. When you're asked to make a line graph, you will need to have data that has both x and y values. It will often be given in a table that looks like this. This graph is going to record the temperature of a classroom hours after 8 a.m. So here's our data. We see that 0 hours after 8 a.m. the temperature is 70 degrees, 1 hour after 8 a.m. it's 72 degrees, and so on and so forth. So when we make the line chart, it will be just like we're plotting x-y points on the coordinate plane. When you're making the chart, you need to look at the range of the x-axis, in this case from 0 to 5, and the range of the y-axis, in this case from 70 to 84, and pick values that make sense for your graph. When I'm choosing my y values, I'll probably want to pick values that allow me to see the change clearly, meaning we want to zoom in so that we're close to the numbers of 70 and 84. I'm going to start at 70, and I'm going to count up by 4. So now I'm going to start to graph. At 0 hours after 8 a.m., the temperature is 70 degrees, meaning I start here, at the origin of my little graph. At 1 hours, the temperature is 72, so we find the value of 72 on the y-axis, and we plot our point. At 2 hours after 8 a.m., our temperature is 75 degrees. We find the value that's roughly around 75, and we'll plot it here. After we're finished drawing our data points, we want to draw a smooth line between all of those points. Because this is not a y equals mx plus b situation, we're actually recording data points. We do not draw a little arrow off either end of the graph. We're just recording the changes, and we're drawing a line between those changes so that our eyes can see the steepness of each slope of each line. For example, you can say at 4 hours after 8 o'clock, so at noon, it was around, and you would trace up here from 4 hours after, was around 83 degrees in the classroom. At 3 hours after 8 a.m., the temperature was probably around 80 degrees. These values are not actually ones that we know or recorded, but we can use the graph to estimate or interpret.